Hey, what's going on everyone? My name is Cole Kakamis and welcome back to the channel. So for about 2 weeks now, I've been daily driving the iPhone 13 Pro and I'm really excited to be bringing you guys my honest thoughts and full review. I've had the chance to play around with all the different camera improvements, get used to the screen, and have a pretty good idea of the battery life that this phone offers. So with that said, let's actually talk about it. Starting off with the screen, it's one of the most significant updates that we received this year. The display has a peak brightness of 1200 nits and looks fantastic. As usual, the colors are really accurate and viewing all sorts of content on here is a really great experience. Whether I'm scrolling on Instagram, checking out my friends' photos, or just watching a video, everything looks super crisp. The new notch, which is 20% smaller, is honestly something I've kind of fell in love with, I'm not gonna lie. I know that I'm one of very few people who actually care about this, but it honestly looks so much cleaner in my opinion. While it doesn't really offer much, as the extra space in the status bar isn't utilized for anything like a battery percentage, you do still need to swipe down from control center, which is fine, but I do think that having all these same camera modules into a smaller area was a good move. Now, it is worth noting that it's slightly taller than the previous notches, so on some videos, depending on the aspect ratios, it'll cut in a little bit, which is a little annoying to see. Onto 120Hz ProMotion, this is hands down my favorite feature of the phone, and the second that I unboxed it, turned it on, I felt how smooth it was. This isn't your typical 120Hz refresh rate though, because it's adaptive, meaning that depending on the content being displayed on the screen and the movements of your fingers, it'll update accordingly. This is part of the reason that the battery inside is so good this year, but we'll get to that in a second. You could definitely argue that the average consumer isn't really going to care all too much about it, probably won't even notice until you tell them, which is true, but I think that for the more techie pro users that this phone is really aimed towards, it's definitely an awesome feature to have. At the moment, developers still do have to opt in and optimize their apps to exceed 60 Hz for all their animations, but I think that Apple still does a really good job when it comes to tracking your fingers' movement so that it feels smooth. I'm most looking forward to see games take advantage of it because as of right now, there's only a very select few titles who actually do. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, in my opinion, battery life is the #1 reason that you should consider buying the iPhone 13 Pro. With the efficiency of the new A15 chip, a physically larger battery, and the adaptive ProMotion screen, this year's iPhone is excellent at holding a charge. Since Apple makes their own CPUs, they're optimized extremely well, which is one of the reasons that I've always really loved using iOS and all of Apple's other products. They're able to squeeze out so much performance without making sacrifices. From an article in Mac Rumors, Apple has, quote, managed to reduce power whilst increasing performance, meaning energy efficiency is improved by 17% on the peak performance states versus the A14. Compared to the competition, the A15 isn't 50% faster as Apple claims, but rather 62% faster. While Apple's larger cores are more power hungry, they're still a lot more energy efficient. So yeah. Enough said. The battery's capacity has physically increased, coming from 2,850 mAh on the 12 Pro, up 11%, to 3,095 mAh on the 13 Pro, and then a whopping 19% larger, going from 3,687 mAh on the 12 Pro Max to 4,352 mAh on the 13 Pro Max. And you can definitely tell because this phone is a whole lot thicker and heavier. It's pretty drastic coming from the 11 Pro, which was already relatively light, but I mean, it feels like a feather in comparison to this. But I don't actually mind it all that much. I think it gives it more of a premium feel, which is exactly what you want from a $1,000 plus phone. And this isn't to mention that I get a workout every time I pull this out of my pocket and get better battery life. I mean, it's a win-win. Going back to ProMotion, because it is adaptive and it's not constantly refreshing at 120 Hz when you don't need it, it's going to save you a ton of power. But now what you really care about is the results themselves. Over the past 10 days, I've averaged around 5.5 hours of screen on time, never once dipping below 20% when I go to throw it on the wireless charger for the night. I would say that I'm more of a light phone user as I don't spend like a ton of time scrolling through social media or whatnot, and especially between school and producing content, most of the work is done sitting at the MacBook or computer. With that said though, I do listen to a ton of music and podcasts with my AirPods on here whenever I'm driving, working out, scripting, filming B-roll, all of that. I think that if I really needed to, I would have no problems making this last for 2 days. But when it comes to charging it back up, it's still lightning, and it's sad reality that I've accepted that we're never getting USB-C on here, which sucks because Apple loves to talk about it with the iPad mini and the MacBook and how it's so powerful and so fast, and then they're just like, oh, but not on the Pro phone, not on the Pro phone. So yeah, that's annoying, but I don't know, what are you gonna do? The cameras, the biggest literally update we received this year. Over the past couple weeks using the phone, I spent a lot of time in here just playing around, as I'm sure you've seen yourself or others doing on Instagram and Twitter. I'm really happy that between the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max, it is the same camera, so there's no improved technology on the larger model, which is good in my opinion because I prefer the smaller form factor. To fit the new sensors, the camera module is considerably larger, and this is definitely going to be very noticeable. There's 3 separate layers to it. The bottom glass part is thick in itself, but then you got each of the camera lenses, and then on top of each of the camera lenses, there's another layer of glass, so it's comically thick and just makes for this humongous spot on the back of your phone. It takes up like half the width on here. It lines up with the Apple logo. And because of this, there are some problems that you're going to encounter. As someone who doesn't wear a case, trying to set this down on a flat surface results in a dramatic wobble, and there's also issues when it comes to accessories. For the mobile gamers out there, the Backbone 1 controller no longer fits properly. However, they do have a 3D printed adapter that'll fix that. But right now, if you don't have a 3D printer at home, you're gonna have to send them an email, and I'm still waiting to get mine. Now, I don't own it myself, but I know the MagSafe Duo also does not fit properly. But all that aside, I don't hate it as much anymore, and I think that the photos it can take makes up for it. So each lens did get a nice upgrade. The primary lens now has an aperture of 1.5, the ultra wide with 1.8, and the 3x telephoto with 2.8. And these upgrades show. The wider apertures make night shots look significantly better and capture a lot more detail. It still does have some problems though with capturing the night sky, and I think this is something that's going to need another couple of years to really be perfected. The color profiles that I'm not really seeing a ton of people talk about, they're cool. I really like the idea of them, but for the most part, I've either not been using them or just had on the rich contrast. This one definitely looks the best and a lot more natural, but still making it pop. The primary lens is really good. I've been super impressed with the shots I've been able to get out of it and the detail in them. What I've really noticed and what MKBHD mentioned is that the natural bokeh is actually pretty good, to the point where like you don't really have to use the fake blur of portrait mode. You can still get quite a detailed shot. This is obviously not going to be on the level of a full frame DSLR camera lens, but I think for its compact size and this smartphone body, it is really good. Then the telephoto is also really good. I've been impressed by that one. In most conditions, it's been on par in terms of quality with the main, which is super nice. I hope that we will eventually at some point start to see higher zooms, because this is something that the iPhone has always struggled with its 12 megapixel camera, is that, you know, it produces really clean, detailed looking shots, but as soon as you zoom in, it looks really bad. And finally, the ultra wide lens has again had a really great upgrade, but of course with that 12 megapixel sensor, it's still not the sharpest compared to the main or telephoto, but nonetheless, it still makes for some great photos, especially now with the macro photography mode. This has been a ton of fun to play around with, but I won't give it as much props as everyone is because of 2 things. One is the auto switching between the ultra wide lens, so when you get too close to an object, 14 centimeters specifically, it'll randomly switch from whatever lens you're on and then start freaking out, so the shot's all messed up without the option to stop this. But Apple did say they're going to fix it, add a toggle for you, but at this point in time, it's completely messed up and a pain in the butt every time I try to go take a picture, and it just freaks out on me. And second, what I've noticed is that unless you have really good lighting conditions, then it's really hard to get a crisp shot. It'll be really fuzzy and have a lot of noise. This makes it difficult for me to take photos of things on the desk without an external light, but if you do manage to be in the right situation, it is seriously impressive. The level of detail that you can get in an ordinary object is wild. Like I said, this is one of the most fun features we got, and so from now on, every time I'm in public and see something cool, I'm gonna be that guy pulling out my phone and just getting real up close with all those details. The only other problem I have with it is it makes me realize how dirty my keyboard is. Ugh. Going over to video, first talking about cinematic mode, which I gotta say I'm pretty disappointed. Apple hyped this up a lot at the event, and unfortunately 90% of the time, if the blur doesn't track correctly, part of your subject will always be out of focus. On top of this, it's still locked at 1080p 30, so for most shoots, you're better off just using the regular video mode. Now don't get me wrong, I think that it is a really cool idea. It's fun to play around with, and at the moment, I think what they were really going for was having this be a new feature that people will try out and say like, hey guys, I got the new phone, check this out. Got this really cool blurry background of you guys, that sort of thing. And then over the following years, they'll continue to improve it in software to the point where it may be more of a viable option. The other video improvement is to shoot in ProRes, which is basically just a very high quality video codec. Now it still isn't out officially. I haven't had the chance to try it out, but it is included now in the iOS 15.0.1 developer beta 3. And from what I've seen, it's impressive. I mean, it looks really good, but man, that's storage. From a tweet I saw, it takes 100 megabytes for 1 second. 100 megabytes in a second. God, the 128 gigabyte model makes so much sense now. There is no way that there's enough storage on there to record anything. Now, if you didn't know, the base configuration, 128 gigabytes on the 13 Pro, 13 Pro Max, it can only shoot in 1080p 30. So if you really care about ProRes, make sure you get at least 256. I would say with those numbers, 1 terabyte actually probably makes a little sense if you actually care about that. But even without ProRes, the iPhone's video is still extremely impressive. You have people like SpawnPoint who create great videos. They look awesome. It's all filmed on an iPhone. And so finishing off, talking about the design, I know It's pretty much the same as last year, but with the new Sierra Blue color. Ooh, maybe it's a hot take, but I think this is one of the best iPhone colors like ever. Now, it's definitely a little pale, not as vibrant as it was on Apple's website. At certain angles, you can definitely see that it has more of a gray color to it, but I'm still very happy that I went with it. And because this color is so beautiful and I really just want to admire it, I don't wear a case. And you know what that means? Fingerprint magnet. With Sierra Blue, the sides are silver, and so, I mean, it just gets covered so quickly. Even if you're wiping this down every 5 seconds, it's going to come back. You cannot keep this clean, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And with that, this is the iPhone 13 Pro. This is by far the best Pro iPhone we've had. Right, in previous years, there hasn't been, I feel like, enough to really distinguish between the base model and the Pro. But this year, we have the vastly improved battery, significant camera upgrades, and a much better 120 hertz Pro Motion display. Seriously, for like $200, going from the 13 to the 13 Pro, I mean, I think that's worth it. Honestly, anyone who has a phone that's earlier than the 12 series, this is definitely something you should really consider. Coming from the 11 Pro, this feels like a brand new phone. This is a really big upgrade for me. So, let me know what you think. And so that's all I've got for you guys. If you enjoyed, you want to see more tech content in the very near future, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and take care.